May I ask, is it photos? Does anybody mind? Because we would love to post them on the Military Valley
Is
website.
everyone okay with that?
Thank you.
Now you can hit it.
All right, so I'm gonna introduce our speaker for today is Monica Belyea, a nutrition consultant with the Nutrition, Physical Activity and Obesity Prevention Program at Connecticut Department of Public Health. Her work focuses on policy, system, and environmental changes that promote health and well-being in early childhood, including breastfeeding. So today we're going to talk about supporting breast and test feeding workers and benefits for employers too. So we appreciate that you came to talk to us.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. Super excited. And I just quickly want to say that the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce is the first officially recognized chamber of commerce. So Nancy, Laura, and Bill really put some time into creating this. Come on up. And Jill will get a picture.
Yes, I will indeed.
Here, I'll get one to us in the
Yeah, so we're super excited about this.
The first one.
The first, yes, we love all the first.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Yes, we have some gifts too, and I also want to applaud the chamber for offering to be a location for traveling workers. So anybody who's traveling in the community who needs a private place to plug in and pump can come to the chamber. There are folks around the state who need that support.
How do they learn about that?
So that's a really good question. There's a website called, I sent it to Nancy. There's a website that people who are pumping can check to see where the locations are, but we're working on getting something on the Connecticut Breastfeeding Coalition website.
That's great.
So we have a map of all of the recognized employers and work sites and campuses. And we're working to add public places if you need to stop them. So, yes. So I'm gonna go really quick. The components of the presentation that are sort of physical health related or need more detail, we have, when you get the slides, there's links to everything. So, and also if you have questions, we can cover them at the end. But anyway, I want to just go quickly. So in the lactation community, we are working really hard to be more inclusive. So we'll use terms like chest feeding, human milk, lactation, nursing, pumping. We're trying to make the table wide. So when I use those terms interchangeably, that's why we try to tell folks that because it's newer language. Maybe you haven't heard it before. And also the department collects data from state residents. So this is from the behavioral risk factor surveillance system. We call folks and ask them questions about their health experience. And so this is the percent of children ever breastfed, which is somewhere between 78 and 80% of all people start breastfeeding. So most families know that that's what they want. But then if you look to the next slide, only about 50% of people make it to the minimum recommendation. So what we're really trying to do is remove the barriers. And you see that for low-income folks and different races and ethnicities, there are more barriers than for other folks. So we really need to focus on the policy and systems changes that make it accessible for everybody. And we're not just talking about like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if. So what we know from the research is that not breastfeeding leads to maternal and infant deaths. And so that costs our country $14 billion a year, which is preventable illness and death. So it's nice, but also necessary. And in Connecticut, even though only 4% of women any given year might have a baby, and again, this is gendered language. Eventually we'll have people giving birth and whatever. This is how it's reported now. 75% of the women who gave birth in the previous year were in the workforce. So this is a major area where we can provide additional support to families. There are state and federal laws that protect a person's right to pump or breastfeed in the workplace. So the Department of Labor covers all employers, one employee or more. If you're required to provide a break, you are required to provide a break. And the person can use it for pumping or breastfeeding. The anti-discrimination law in Connecticut was expanded recently to cover pregnant workers, and it explicitly calls out lactation in the workplace. So both of those, most of the time, accommodations can be reasonable and easily arranged by talking to the employee. So what we're hoping is that everybody gets their policies and their systems in place. And then as employees need to utilize them, you have a conversation to make it work. And the federal law, I get choked up every time I say this, so I'm gonna not cry, but in December, nope, I'm not.
You're not gonna make it.
We've been working since the Affordable Care Act was passed, we've been working to expand who's covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act that provides lactation accommodations. In December, the Pump for Nursing Mothers Act was passed. Everybody's covered. Everybody's covered except airline pilots and flight attendants. So that's still there. Yeah. Yes, so unfortunately, there are still folks who are left out, but the vast majority of employees are now covered by the federal law as well. And so if it's covered by law, why do we need to do this? Because there's still, there's discrimination in the workplace. And so some of these cases are from Connecticut. There are several lawsuits that have been brought in Connecticut related to workplace accommodation. So we want to help employers get out in front of that. Have something in place so you can both support your employees, do the right thing, and protect yourself from a lawsuit. So the good news is that there's documented return on investment for employers. So it's nice to do it, it saves lives, and it benefits your company. So the Federal Office of Women's Health did quality improvement work with real live employers, variety of sizes, locations, types of employers, and they found that continually providing lactation accommodations in the workplace real return on investment. So right now, I think turnover is a huge issue in the workplace, trying to keep good employees after they go out on leave, having them come back. So the research shows that employees who have lactation accommodations come back sooner from break and stay longer. So that is super important, and also the healthcare costs. So moms and dads, every parent has fewer call outs when their child receives human milk because their babies are not sick as often. So you get less healthcare costs, less absenteeism, less call out. And all of this information, when you get the slides, is linked through the Office of Women's Health business case for breastfeeding. And there's all sorts of other fun benefits. Productivity and loyalty are a little bit harder to measure, but still valuable. And I'll just say that the department is a breastfeeding friendly worksite. It was the first state office to be recognized, and Commissioner Giuttani has a letter right out on our breastfeeding page to encourage employers. So the department and the Connecticut Breastfeeding Coalition and the Naugatuck Valley Health District, we're all here to help you. So what goes into it? It's pretty simple. I said the law covers break time. It's helpful based on biology to have flexible break times. A person is not going to necessarily need to pump every day at the same time. So having some flexibility, and also the number of breaks that they might need. They do not have to be paid breaks. If it's a paid break, then it's a paid break. If it's an unpaid break, it's an unpaid break. Whatever your break rules are in following the Fair Labor Standards, that's the kind of break that they can take. Some employees will take an extra break in the middle of the day and make up the time at the end of the day. Those kinds of flexibilities are super important because of biology. And the Office of Women's Health has a variety of examples on their website of different employers, different sectors, different ways that you can make it work for your employees. So whether they're traveling, there's Vintech is a ambulance staffing company in the area. They have created a strategy for their ambulance workers to be able to pump. So, you know, like these are, it's not that hard. It takes a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of pre-planning, but it can be done in all kinds of different ways. And then the options for returning to work, a gradual return to work, job sharing, telecommuting, all of those kinds of things can make it easier for employees. So the space is also required. It cannot be a bathroom. I don't want to eat in the bathroom. I don't want babies to eat in the bathroom. So let's legally cannot be a bathroom. It should be private, meaning no one can walk in on you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a locked space as long as there is agreement and nobody's going to walk in on you while you're trying to pump. It has to be close enough. It has to be a reasonable accommodation. If the space is so far away that the employee can't get to it during their break time, that's not reasonable accommodation. So it needs to be within proximity to the workspace. It does not have to be a dedicated space. If you don't have a room that you could give over to lactation, that's okay. As long as there's a way for the employee to schedule that space and that it's accessible when they need it. So again, doesn't have to be designated, but it has to be available. So if it's unschedulable and they can't get to it, that's not a reasonable accommodation. In Connecticut, they updated the space section of our law to say that there needs to be an electrical outlet. Most pumps run on electricity. And there has to be a sink nearby. It does not have to be in the space. And then finally, refrigeration. So you do not have to provide a dedicated refrigerator. Some employees prefer to have their own personal cooler. All of those count as refrigeration space.
So if there's a refrigerator in your break room, but it's, 50 feet away, that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, as long as they're allowed to keep them there. There has to be also, if an employee's like, ew, I don't want breast milk in our shared refrigerator, then there has to be a policy that says she's allowed to put her milk in our shared refrigerator and here's where it's gonna be. Otherwise, you get, the hostility that makes it hard to use. So these things, education is not required by the law, but it is really helpful. And in Connecticut, we have a couple of employee-focused resources. The Ready Set Baby is a self-guided education website where folks can get information on breastfeeding. We also have resources that I brought, like materials that you can share. We link all of those on the Connecticut Breastfeeding Coalition website. And then support, it's immeasurable. Knowing that your colleagues are supporting you makes all the difference in the world, and sometimes can be more important than the space. Knowing that the people around you are rooting for you makes a huge difference. And you'll find that employees are willing to work with you on what their needs are because you're providing support for this time. So what goes into, so the policy, the Connecticut Breastfeeding Coalition for the recognition requires a policy so that everybody in the worksite has access to the accommodation. It's not reliant upon a supportive supervisor. When that supportive supervisor leaves, what are the employees left with? The policy that requires the new supervisor to implement. So these, you all know about policy. If you want to bring this up with the HR council when they meet, might be a great opportunity to help get the policies through. So we just outlined some things to put in your policy that make it useful. So specifying as much as you can while still being flexible for your own location. We're all here to help you modify and make a policy that works for you. We do like to have an employee component of the policy so that they know what their responsibilities are in terms of asking for the accommodation, letting their supervisor know ahead of time. This is their plan is really helpful. Breastfeeding is a time sensitive and short duration activity. if they don't have the accommodations, within a couple weeks, milk supply can fall off, meaning they won't be able to provide milk for their baby anymore. And I said resources available on the Connecticut Breastfeeding Coalition website, including sample policies for everybody to modify. And this is the supporting nursing moms at work. As I said, examples of specific types of employers and size of employers. And then the coalition application. So once you go through all this process, we want to recognize you and have your company listed on our website. So people can look you up and say, oh, yeah, look at that. Where you can see there are clusters. So when the coalition's working with an organization like the health district, you'll see a cluster of work sites show up on the map. It's very exciting. And that is my presentation.
Okay, do you know if all the health districts in Connecticut have mirrored programs?
So they don't actually, so Stratford, we were working with Stratford for quite a while. They did a lot. There are several breastfeeding friendly childcare providers in Stratford as a result of that, as well as the libraries in the area all have public space for traveling workers. There is the Hartford Health Department was working on some initiatives, but it is health department, my health department, yeah.
My office is in Milford.
Great, we'd love to
Okay.
work with Milford.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's frankly, that's part of the point of our being here today, which is that we're really trying to plant the seed. Mateo is graduating and isn't going to be with us a whole lot longer. But our coalition has wanted to get involved in this for a while, and we're going to be looking at another intern probably. But we're hoping that that you guys will, go back to your workplaces, talk with the HR people, whomever you need to, or maybe you are the HR people in some cases. And then get to me. I put my card around at the health district and let us know that, you're exploring this, and we will help in any way we can. And Mateo's going to be around a little bit during the summer too, so.
Can you do the same presentation if we were to get a group of like our managers and everybody together?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're still, we're kind of, I don't know if we're training the trainer, but we've been relying on Monica, so it's kind of up to her. But yes.
Okay.
I should say yes. So the answer is yes. Yeah.
And I have resources too that we brought, so there are different kinds of posters. And for doctors' offices, we have these really nice kits that you can put out.
These are written in different languages too, which is helpful.
Yeah, we try to have everything in English and Spanish. This one describes the laws front and back in English and Spanish, and then make a plan and make it work. These cards are for employees. So we have all of this stuff. We would love to have it out in the community. And then when you go through the process and become recognized, we give you a certificate you can hang up, poster frames for your poster, these cute lunch bags that have resources. And I just want to say that the chamber does not have any employees who are childbearing age right now. So being an employer, if you don't have somebody who the rules would apply to right now, that's okay. We'll still recognize you because you're putting stuff in place for the future. So just, I wanted to.
That's one of the things I said, is like, we can go 2 years without having one of our employees, and right now I have 2.
Yeah.
So we do have a office, I'll say our medical records office that they
Yeah.
typically have used.
Yeah.
This is probably common sense, but is it beneficial, or what would you recommend that we try to soften the space a little bit and make it more inviting? Like, to me now, I'm thinking there's just a table in there and a chair, like maybe make it a better chair, maybe put in, a tablecloth, like a little light, something to make it just more relaxing versus a rocking chair. Versus a sterile.
So every person is different in their pumping experience. Having a bulletin board or a place where they can put a picture of their baby sometimes is helpful in terms of getting into the mindset of pumping, because you do have to relax.
Yeah.
Some people are like, boom, in, out, 10 seconds, you know, and other people need a full 20 minutes to get in the headspace, get the milk, let down has to occur, the milk, you know, like it's just a process, the way that the tissue works. That,
So it might be helpful
Yeah.
for us to have that conversation with our
With
pregnant employees, or once they start, what
Yes.
works for you. Feel free to make this your own space if you want to bring in your own music, or, okay.
Yep, we've had places that have put in a comfortable chair, and a light. And we've had other places where they just can't do it, so they, you know, every workplace does the best they can to make it the space as inviting as possible, and we're not judging people based
Right.
on that component, just that the space is 100% available to the folks who need it when they need it, yeah.
Could I ask, Mateo, just to maybe just briefly say what are the materials that, you created for us for that are
Sure.
specific to the Valley?
Yeah, well, overall, they just kind of summarize all the information that Monica has gathered and presented, but they're just handy, little materials that you can follow along. So we have this one, is an intro to all the material that Monica just presented, as I said. So there's the biological benefits on the health of the infant and the mother or the parent. There is also the ROI for the employer, and then it just kind of describes very quick what the law and the recognition requires of the employer. This one is just a snapshot, it's the same thing. And then this piece is following the recommendation of a lactation consultant at Griffin Health. She was voicing her concerns about how a lot of the mothers don't know about these laws, they don't have resources, and then a lot of them still have like stigma around the topic of breastfeeding. So she was saying that it would be helpful to have just a little piece that would introduce them to the world of breastfeeding, really. And so we made that one to be distributed there.
And yeah, and the intent of that really is also that the mom then can get in touch with either Naugatuck Valley or the Breastfeeding Coalition and say, you know, I need help at my work site and I don't really want to be a whistleblower, but you know, what do I do? So and then the shorter one, the one side or the snapshot, this is what we're going to be sending out to companies through email saying, you know, we'd like to knock on your door, and then this is what we'll take with us when we come and visit and you know, talk.
When you send us the slides, can you send us those, please?
Yes,
That would be great.
absolutely.
And the with the passage of the Pump Act in December, there's a couple of explainers, national based organizations. Talking about your pump to your employer and the Pump Act explainer that we can also link to that are helpful for employees. The piece over here called Make a Plan is really to try and help folks think ahead, because once you're back at work, it's much harder to make the plan and to put it into place than if you're able to do it ahead of time. So that's the purpose of those two.
Now, this is not every state, just some states.
So the Pump for Nursing Mothers Act is federal, it covers all employees across the country. And there are some limitations to the Pump Act, like there's more undue hardship release for employers with fewer than 50 employees, which Connecticut does not allow. If you have one employee, you must comply. So it does vary, like the extent of the accommodations by state, and also the anti-discrimination law for Connecticut is different than other states, but the Pump Act covers the entire country. Yeah, and so what we're finding now is that national based employers are starting to develop policies. So if you work for a company that is a affiliate of a national, there's more likely to have a policy in place now. And the other thing I want to say is that we've talked to, but not me personally, but members of the Connecticut Breastfeeding Coalition are hearing from parents who are giving up on breastfeeding rather than having the hard conversation with their employer because they are marginally employed and they're worried about losing their job. So
Yeah.
having this stuff in place prevents that. And also your company benefits, right? Like, there's no harm in putting it in place.
That's pretty cool. My daughters work whenever they have a pregnant employee,
Yeah.
they put up a sign and they reserve the closest parking spaces for the pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just a little
Yes.
extra touch that makes that employee, and it's helpful, you
Right.
know, when you get 6 months past, sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard to walk
Get
or
all the way there,
breathe.
Yeah. And to normalize, so there are a lot of managers who are men. And so we want to just encourage all the guys to be out front. This is not, it's not embarrassing, it's biology, and getting out in front of it really shows your support for your employees.
Even men were babies at one point too.
At one point. I know Valentine.
Nobody breastfeeding me, that's what I'll be
I think Valentine joined us. Valentine, if you want to introduce yourself.